I am always really thrilled to welcome Jillian back. Jillian is a first generation college student, and I'm going to let her give you her entire background because she's done a lot. But she is a teacher, so she is educating our youth, and U.S. history is one of her specialties. She started a group called Roots to Revolution to make sure that adults had the same education about the history of our country and basically how we got here. Jillian, I'm doing a really bad job of introducing you. She holds a bachelor's degree in international affairs from Lafayette College and a master's of education from Pace University. And I love this. I need to come visit you because she says when she's not teaching, she loves to cook pasta. And I think that sounds amazing. And I think she'd be super fun to hang out with. So I am going to bring Jillian up right now, and we will let her finish saying anything she wants to say about herself or Roots to Revolution, and we are going to get going.
I hate talking about myself. I love talking about history. So thank you, Julie, for the introduction. Really excited to be here tonight. I'm so happy to see so many people here. And I think that the media has been talking a lot about the resistance being dead or slow or sleepy. And I think tonight is definitely proof that that is not the case. And just please make sure you spread the word about how many inspiring people are on this chat from all over the country, and share that with them. So, like Julie said, I'm Jillian, and I have been teaching for 17 years. I've taught everyone from ages 5 to 80 in my classes, which is, I'm really proud to have taught a range of people. I also adjunct at Montclair State University, and I train history teachers for my primary job, for a charter school network in Brooklyn, New York. And really happy tonight to talk about how we use joy to organize our communities, create change, and really get connected to one another. And I think that I want to just talk a little bit about what this workshop is going to be about. I'm a history teacher who loves to make things interactive. So if you are someone like me and you have a notebook nearby, pen and paper, we're going to take some notes throughout this session. Not like notes like, oh, I have to like have all the right answers notes. It's not that kind of history lesson. Notes about yourself, because we're going to be talking a little bit about our personalities and how we can use activism in a way that really aligns with who we are. If you don't have a notebook nearby, or you don't even own a notebook anymore because it's 2025 and everything is digital, you might just want to open up like a Google Doc on your computer alongside the Zoom, so you can just take a few notes and a few ideas to think about as we go through the session. And again, this is just for you. It's not for anyone to look at or grade or anything like that. Tonight's kind of like a history personality quiz. Like, which activist do you most align with? So that's why we're going to be taking some notes on those things. The other thing is, I'll say, ideas are definitely welcome in the chat. There's a lot of us, which I'm so excited about. So there'll be Q&A at the end. So if you have a question, put it in the chat. And then we'll do some questions at the end, and really excited to have answers to those. And then I definitely want to just talk about kind of like what we're doing here. And sometimes in these sessions, like, we will leave tonight with concrete next steps for how to fight for change in this country in a joyful way. But I also want to talk about tonight, we got to start to think about how, and maybe some of you are already thinking about this, how we can be lifelong activists, how we can be lifelong creating change. And so I don't think I'll have all the answers for you. And I want to just, we want to say that too. And just kind of keep in our mind as we go through tonight, let's think about how we can integrate activism into who we are as people, and who we are as individuals. And you're here, so you probably are already like that. So I'm really excited to have you and to talk more tonight. So I wanted to just show this picture of Inside Out 2. If you want to share in the chat if you've seen Inside Out 2, you just give me a yes or a no. But I watched this movie the other night, and I really loved it. And anxiety is the character who's orange, and anxiety is like taking over Riley's body, and anxiety is causing all these problems in her life. And the only thing that was able to stop anxiety and save Riley was the character Joy. And Joy comes in and she saves Riley from anxiety. And I thought it was perfect for this moment because I think we're all probably feeling a lot of anxiety. We're all feeling a lot of fear. We're all feeling a lot of anger. We're all feeling all these emotions. And anxiety isn't a bad thing because at the end, anxiety learns how to sit in a chair and relax and remind Riley when she has a test. And like that's what anxiety is good for. Anxiety is good to tell us about the things we have to do, but anxiety is not good when it really breaks you down and destroys you. Um, and joy and anxiety need to work together. And I think that's what I want us to think about tonight is how do we use the things we're seeing in the news that we don't like, that are upsetting us, that are causing anxiety, and help us flip it to joy and help us use that joy to fight for change. And I also want us to think about too, helping, you're here tonight, and I want you to help other people when you leave tonight's session, maybe come out of the paralysis they might be feeling because anxiety also causes us to be numb. It can cause us to give up. It can cause us to feel doom. And so we have to help each other um, get out of that phase of anxiety and push forward. So I encourage you also, maybe when you leave this session, to go watch Inside Out 2. It's adorable and wonderful and really great. So what I want us though to think about also is now to just like this is where I have your notebooks and your Google Docs ready. Um, I want you to think for just a minute, and you can write this on your own or jot it down, some answers to these questions. So, what are some things in your life right now that are bringing you joy? So, for example, for me, it's my cat, Sammy. It is crocheting. It is my niece and nephew. It is going to dance class. And I also want you to think about what are some activities that you're doing right now that allow you to feel flow, where you're in the moment, you're present, and you're never distracted. So, for example, when I teach, I'm not worried about Elon Musk. I'm not thinking about that. I'm really in it with my students, with my people. That's really important. And then, what are some things that are people who make you feel energized? So my friend Kat is on this call right now. And Kat and I co-founded Roots to Revolution together. And whenever I leave a conversation with Kat, I feel energized. She fills up my cup. She makes me feel like I can change the world. And I need to be around people like that when I'm trying to make change. So I see some people are putting examples in the chat, which I love. But I want you to think about right now on your own, just independently, jot down some of your own examples. So you don't have to put them in the chat right now if you don't want to, but just jot down your own examples because we're going to use this list at the end of the workshop to help us think about our own activism. And people just gave some amazing examples in the chat. So I'm just going to give people a minute to think, jot down their own examples on their Google Doc. All right. Okay, so as we go through this session, and I'm seeing people, they're giving me ideas for how we can use some of these ideas. As we go through this session, I want you to think about these things that bring you joy, these people in your life who bring you joy, people who provide you with energy, activities that allow you to feel flow and connection to other people, because we're going to think about how we can use all these things and help them channel our activism and help us really get into our activism and be stronger in that. Okay. So I want to center us too in what I mean by joy in tonight's session and how we're going to define joy. So Goldie Muhammad is an incredible educator who has written a book called Cultivating Genius, and it's all about how to help bring out the best in students and how to bring joy into the classroom. And I really have learned so much from her work. And this quote is how I want us to think about joy tonight. So she says, I define joy as the ancestors defined it, I found that for centuries, Black people have defined joy as something more than having fun or celebrating, but as a sustained effort to recognize and honor the beauty of and within the earth. To the ancestors, joy was art and aesthetics. Joy meant coming together for advocacy and problem solving to make the world better. Joy was wellness, healing, and justice. And so she breaks this down further when she talks about the different ways in which joy is defined. So I don't need to read these all out to you, but I would love for you to take a moment to read these to yourself, and then I'll talk a little bit about these examples. And I'd love for people to put in the chat, like which number in this list is really standing out to you. And tonight, as we go through the session and you're thinking about which number is standing out to you, I see a lot of fives. Love it. Okay. That's the one I want you to focus on. That's the one I want you to think about. Okay, I want to really focus on bringing joy through love and music and art. I want to really focus on joy with a collective and working with other people. I want to really focus on joy and being my own truth, being my authentic self, because that really does add so much joy to the world. Now, I want to talk a little bit about why we need to center joy. And it's not just because we are depressed. It is, and we are sad about politics. Joy is the antidote in this way, right? When we think about joy in this way, joy is the antidote to depression. Joy is the antidote to fascism and authoritarianism. Donald Trump and authoritarian leaders depend on people being isolated. They depend on people feeling alone. They depend on people feeling hopeless. They depend on people not feeling confident in pushing back and separated and not connected. And so when we have community, when we have joy, we are fighting those things. We are pushing back. And I think it's really important that we remember that. On a lighter note, something that helps me also take these scary things that are happening and these scary men that are leading our country. Something that helps me too is reminding myself that Melania Trump wore a hat to the inauguration that allowed her to not even make physical contact with her husband. That's how little they like one another. And I don't want to, like, Melania has agency. She can leave him. So I'm not, but I have people in my life who really love me. And that makes me stronger than Donald Trump. And I love a lot of people in my life. And that makes me stronger than Elon Musk, right? That makes me strong. Joy makes me strong. And so when I'm feeling a little bit down, I keep that in mind, that joy is really the antidote to this pain and this oppression that they want us to feel. And to that end, also, we need to bring in people into our community. We need to make people feel connected to us, feel solidarity, feel connection, feel love, because that's going to help us move forward. And so I think that's really, really important that we center on these things. Okay, so what I want us to think about is we're going to look at some really powerful women from history. And what I want us to think about is, as we go through these examples of these women, how do you see your personality reflected in these women? How do you think you can translate their work into your everyday life and your everyday community? And so we're going to do a few examples of these together, and we'll then talk a little bit about it as a group. So using art for change. This is a picture of Josephine Baker, who was an incredible jazz musician and jazz artist and singer. And she was in the time period known as the Harlem Renaissance, a singer in clubs in the United States. And then she moved to Paris. And when she was singing clubs in Paris, she would eavesdrop on the Nazis and she would help the Allied powers get intel. when she was singing in the clubs. And her songs also really elevated people. They really excited people. And so in that way, I mean, she really used her art as a way to make change. I'm thinking about Beyonce's Grammy that she won on Sunday, long overdue, for Best Album of the Year, and then also for Best Country Album. And her song, Texas Hold'em, the first instrument that you hear in that song is the banjo. And the banjo was an instrument that was brought over from West Africa by people who were enslaved. And on the plantations, people played the banjo over and over again to bring joy in the time of slavery. They also used the banjo to when people were running away off the plantations, self-emancipating and freeing themselves. They used the banjo as part of the spirituals to help communicate with one another secretly and move from place to place. And so maybe what people don't realize in that song is Beyonce using the banjo is a deliberate call back to that culture and to that history. And she is bringing awareness to Black culture and Black arts through her art and sharing it on a wide scale, right? Now, I'm not asking everyone to be Beyonce or Josephine Baker, but I want us to think about how art can be used as a vehicle for change. And I also want to talk about some people who was also really big in creating spaces for artists to meet. So Madam C.J. Walker was one of the wealthiest Black women in the 1920s who created a line of hair care products. And she had an enormous home in upstate New York. And at a time when queer people were not allowed to be out, not allowed to meet in clubs, she invited those people into her home to have parties, to socialize, to connect, to meet with one another, to expand their ideas, to talk about racial justice, because her daughter was gay and she wanted to be supportive of her daughter, but also wanted to create a safe space for artists. And so when I think about these examples of these women and what I can learn from them, these are some ways that I think about how we can bring joy into our life, thinking about these women. So maybe we use music and art to host a concert and donate the proceeds to charity. Maybe we think about supporting artists who are using their platforms for change. Maybe we have access to a space. Maybe you have access to a golf club or to maybe you have a big home, a big backyard, and you can offer your space up to an organization to do work. Maybe you are the photographer at the organizing event. Maybe you create the website for social media. I am terrible at making graphics, but other people are incredible at making graphics. Maybe you do that for the organizing event. Maybe you design the decorations for an event. And so you have to think about if art is connected to your personality. So what I'd love to hear in the chat right now is who are all the people who feel that they are creative. You can just say, like, yes, I am a creative. Yes, I am an artist. Love to know who are the artists in the room. Okay, so these might be the areas for you to think about your change. And so as you're taking notes tonight, think about, okay, how can I align my artistic talents with art? Where can I connect to art? We got a lot of artists in here. Okay. So, you know, you don't have to be Beyonce, but maybe you can use those talents. You have a group of people together, you play some music and you say, we're going to donate some of this money to an organization that's helping abortion providers, or we're going to donate some of this money to a public school, whatever cause it is. Or maybe you want to help connect with a political campaign and you want to design some of their graphics for their Instagram, right? These are some of the things you can think about. How do you want to use your art for change? Okay. We all love Shirley Chisholm. She's one of my favorites because she's also from Brooklyn. And I want to talk a little bit about inside politics with Shirley Chisholm. So inside politics is meaning we're like working the system from the inside. And Shirley is someone who certainly worked from the inside. And she was the first Black woman to be elected to Congress. She also really set a standard for not taking donations from people who were inside, big boss politics. She stuck to small donations. She helped advocate for really important legislation that gave us the rights we have today. The food stamp program, the 1974 minimum wage. She just was an incredible, incredible leader. So if you love politics, what are some everyday things that you can do if you want to work from the inside? And if your personality is an insider for politics, it means you're probably really diplomatic. You're probably really good at negotiating. You probably really have a very high tolerance for criticism. You have a thick skin, and that makes you really good for inside politics. And so here are some everyday actions if you're someone who likes inside politics. You should work on a library board. You should do maybe some community board work, running for school board, run for anything. Help. I see some people putting help new people run for office. Absolutely. Organize a visit to your senator's office. I was on a call with the Working Families Party. It's so important right now that we're going to our senators' offices and we're talking to them and we're showing up in person. You are the person who needs to call your representatives on a regular basis and get your friends to do the same, right? And phone banking. Now, this is not everyone's cup of tea. Not everybody wants to run for office, and that is totally, totally fine. But if this is something you are good at, and this is something you think you can be good at, I want you to really be a part of thinking about running for office or getting involved with a campaign and using your tools on a campaign for that. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about now Miss Ella Baker. So Ella Baker is really one of the unsung sheroes of history. She trained Dr. Martin Luther King on how to do grassroots community organizing. She also really believed along those lines that ordinary people needed to be community leaders. She really did not believe that people needed permission to organize. She believed that people should be the change from the ground up. She also really believed that organizations shouldn't be hierarchical or overly bureaucratic. She felt like they should have some structure, but at the same time, they should really be connected to the people. And she also believed in the power of youth. So she did a lot of work with young people, helping them form their own branches of the NAACP. And she also really believed in listening to create solutions. And so she believed in addressing school segregation through talking to parents and really, really connecting with families on how to solve those issues. And from talking to families and from talking to teachers, she came up with ways to really support schools and desegregate schools in New York. Now, I also want to talk about women of the Black Panther Party, who also had a similar type of work to Ella Baker in terms of community organizing. So the women of the Black Panther Party are kind of the opposite of Shirley Chisholm. They are operating more on the outside politics, which is that we're trying to reform the system from the outside instead of reforming the system from the inside. And we need both of those things. We need people on the inside trying to make things better, and we need people on the outside pushing and pushing, pushing for change. So the women of the Black Panther Party were visionaries, and they imagined a world that a lot of people couldn't conceive of were possible. And I think even today, as I'm about to say this, people would probably say what I'm about to say is controversial and might not agree. But they believed in abolishing prisons. They believed in abolishing the police because they believed if our communities were strong enough and our social services were strong enough, there would be no need for those things. They organized free lunch programs in school. They emphasized the concept of social emotional learning. They created that in the Oakland Community School and really taught about students as holistic groups of people. They also did a lot of grocery runs for seniors and drove their seniors to doctor's appointments, made sure they were safe. They hosted literacy and voter registration drives, and they saw themselves as part of a global movement. And so they didn't think that they were just fighting to end racism in America. They thought about fighting racism abroad as well. And so what I want to highlight with these women, with the women of the Black Panther Party and Ella Baker, is they were all about community. And they didn't wait for the federal government to help them. They didn't wait for the state government to help them. They said, we're going to help ourselves. We're going to do it ourselves for our community. We're going to start mutual aid organizations. We're going to raise money for our schools. We're going to take care of our own, and we're going to be really proud of it, and we're going to have a good time while we're doing it. And when I think about what these women were up against, it was an incredible amount of challenge. And I think that we can all say that they did it in a way that really brought people together and socialized. And I think that something we also need to think about is some of the myths around the Black Panther Party. This idea that everyone was just men with guns. The women of the Black Panthers were 70% of the organization. And so they really represented this idea that, we can come together in community and help one another. And so, what are some everyday examples of community action? So, this might sound really simple, but if you live in a big city, introducing yourself to your neighbors is an act of resistance. And it is an act of resistance because Trump wants to keep us isolated. And getting to know each other, making small talk with your neighbors, talking to people every day, connecting with one another, thinking about how on a local level you can support your community, organizing food drives and clothes drives, starting a mutual aid organization where you help get Google Drives going and you find out Google survey going and you find out who in your neighborhood needs groceries and you deliver them to each other. You also should be thinking about, like, in your community, let's talk to teachers, let's talk to police officers, let's talk to doctors. What are the challenges that they're facing around crime, education, healthcare? And then how do we elevate those policy choices to a higher level, to make sure our legislative leaders are hearing from grassroots people instead of hearing from these big organizations and not from real people. That's why sometimes elections are lost, because they're not hearing from ordinary people. And how do we make wise shopping choices? How are we boycotting companies that support harmful companies and support harmful politics and support small businesses and support Black owned businesses and support women owned businesses, women businesses that align with our values instead of lining the pocket of Jeff Bezos. And I think what we also need to kind of think about is, how do we continue to boycott and make those challenges? Today is Rosa Parks' birthday. And Rosa Parks was on a boycott of the buses. They led those bus boycotts for 15 months. It wasn't one day, it was 15 months, and that was a sacrifice. And so we have to make sacrifices and choices with our money that really make change. And so I think that's really important for us to connect with. So I want to pause here because I gave you some women examples that are from history, inside politics with Shirley Chisholm, community organizing with Ella Baker, thinking about the Black Panther Party. And I want you to just kind of name in the chat, art as a tool for resistance. I want you to name in the chat which examples are resonating the most with your personality. Who are you feeling like you're similar to? Like, you can say, like, I'm kind of like that woman. I can see myself in her. Would love for you to put in the chat, who are some of the women that you're starting to really resonate with? Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Great. Great. Seeing a lot of Black Panthers in this chat. I'm loving it. Okay. Amazing. All right. So as we continue to think about this, I want you to think about, now, I had you in the beginning, think about some of the things you love and how it relates to community organizing. So, for example, I love to cook. I'm Italian American. I love to make a sauce. I love to make meatballs. And this past Friday, I had my friends over. We talked about community organizing. I passed out copies of the Constitution. We ate lots of sauce. We ate lots of baked ziti. We ate lots of meatballs. And I combined my love. And there was a lot of socializing. There was a lot of connection. And that, now we're going to continue this group in Brooklyn, and we're going to work together on doing some different events in our local community. That to me is like very similar to the work that I've learned that from Ella Baker, from the Black Panther Party that I don't need permission to organize. You can join a group, and they're amazing, amazing groups. You're here with Red, White, and Blue. This is an amazing group. You don't need to start something, but you also just need to get your friends together and talk about politics. It doesn't need to be something super formal. And that's organizing. That's resistance. That's joy. And there always needs to be a social component to it. And there needs to be some form of connection to it. That's how we work on these issues. But keeping ourselves isolated, not talking about it, being on our phones, doom scrolling, giving Mark Zuckerberg, the other billionaire at the inauguration, more of our time is not what we need to be doing. We should go on social media because it's an amazing tool. It's probably how you found this here. But we also need to be really spending time in person with each other, talking about our communities. All right, I'm going to give you some other examples of women who also really just think about resistance and joy in a different way. So you may not have ever heard of her. Zakala Sa was a suffragist who was Native American, and she really fought extremely hard to close down the Native American boarding schools. This is the Native American boarding schools, if you're not familiar with this history, was a really dark and painful history, and many generations of people from Native American nations, from indigenous nations were touched by these boarding schools, and had some connection to these schools. And what these schools did was they really tried to force people to assimilate. And they've tried to get people to be more white. So they made the indigenous people give up their languages. They made them give up their culture. And what I've learned from Zakala Sa is that we need to honor our cultures. And especially as white people, we lose our cultures quite a bit to racism because we just become white. We just assimilate to whiteness, and whiteness isn't a deeper identity. We need to go back and connect with our deeper identities, connect with our culture, connect with who we are. And she worked really hard to fight against assimilation policies. And so there's also culture is very wide and culture is very vast. And so we can have different ways of thinking about culture. Culture can be, I am from Ohio, and there's a culture around living in Ohio. I am from New Jersey, and there's a culture around living in New Jersey. But we need to connect to culture, and we need to connect with who we are and our identities, and fight this idea of assimilation. So in real teacher fashion, I'm going to have you practice instead of me giving you the everyday examples. So what are some everyday examples of how we can use culture and our love of culture to fight against dangerous systems? So put those in the chat. What are some everyday examples of how we can learn more about our own culture and use that as a tool for resistance? So I'll start off with one example. One is to like research your ancestry and to like understand your own history, and then research your own history. So give me some other examples. Elizabeth, thank you for kicking us off. Storytelling. What are some other everyday examples? Genealogy, food, reclaiming language, dance. Love it. Yes. Host a potluck, immigration stories, sharing family photos. Yes. Beautiful. Something I did that was really powerful. There's a book called Essential Questions to Ask Your Family, and it's about researching your own family to learn your own family's history. And it was so powerful for me to just sit down and listen. I haven't done my whole family yet because I have a huge Italian American family. But it was so powerful for me to listen to my uncles talk about their history, and to both of them were young people during the Vietnam War, and to hear how both of them reacted to the Vietnam War and pushed back against the Vietnam War in very, very different ways was really fascinating for me to hear. And I think that when we dive into that, we think about where our families intersect, and thinking about our connections and our customs. And this is how we fight white supremacy. When in a nation that's trying to get everyone to just be the same and to adopt white norms, holding on to our culture, holding on to our differences, connecting to our pasts and celebrating those things, that's really, really powerful. And that's something we should be really sharing with other people and everyone in our lives. And I just see some incredible things in the chat about what people are doing to connect with their culture. So take a look through the chat. Make sure you take a moment and pause and just look through that chat of all the things people are saying about connecting to culture. All right, beautiful. Okay, I did sneak one man in here. I did sneak one man in here, even though I had mostly women, but I did allow Bayard Rustin to come through. So another thing I want to talk about is a lot of times we talk about activism, and I think what comes into our heads is we think a lot about the person talking, right? Like the person like me that's leading the presentation, or the person who is leading the march, or the person that is running for office. And we don't think about all the things behind the scenes that go into these pieces, these bigger events, right? And Bayard Rustin was all about logistics. He helped organize the March on Washington. He did all the logistics. And someone needs to do all the logistics for any organizing event. So if you're hosting an event where you're doing a teach-in on something, someone needs to set up the projector. I'm not good with setting up the projector. Someone needs to set up the projector. Someone needs to make sure there's water bottles for the march. Someone needs to make sure there's a schedule and everyone stays on time. Someone needs to make sure there's an agenda. Someone needs to make sure there's a budget. Someone needs to follow all of these things to make sure that we are ready to go. And so if you're the logistics person, that is a really powerful way to be connected to this. Okay. And I think another thing we need to think about is humor. Um, so this is an account on Instagram that I think is really funny. It's called Republicans. It's like in honor of RuPaul, and they use AI to remake the Republicans in drag. And it's both hilarious and also making a statement, right? About how we should not be afraid of drag queens. We should have gender fluidity in our society, and it's doing it in a really hilarious way. An example from the past, and Republicans is public, you can, current, you can find that online. An example from the past is someone I love, Flo Kennedy. Flo Kennedy was a Columbia Law graduate in the 70s at a time when not that many women were able to go to law school or graduate from law school. And at Harvard, there were no bathrooms in the campus's main buildings for women. They weren't allowed to go to the bathrooms with men, right? Similar to what we're hearing right now with like these transgender bathroom laws, like women were not allowed to go use the bathrooms in the main law school building. And this obviously was a problem for women because when they were taking an exam or taking class, they had to walk all the way across campus to go to the bathroom. And that's very disruptive to their learning. So women activists on Harvard's campus reached out to Flo Kennedy to help them organize a protest. And Flo Kennedy was really, really funny and had a really good sense of humor in addition to being brilliant. And so what she helped organize in 1973 was called the Great Harvard Pee-In of 1973. And what they did was they put a bunch of toilets all over the lawn on Harvard's campus, and they got jars of yellow water. It wasn't really urine, but it looked like urine. And they lined them up all over the steps of the campus and poured the urine out all over the campus to say, let us go to the bathroom. And sometimes we just need to be funny. Sometimes we just need to have humor. We need to use our humor to make change and to really fight for change. And Flo was someone who was absolutely doing that in her work. And so I think that's a really important example of that humor and liveliness and social connection is so, so important. All right. So another group of people that I want to talk about too is just this idea of self-reflection and allyship, and how that in many ways can also be just like a form of activism. Sitting back, listening, taking in, following. and also learning how to change and be different. So Gloria Steinem, obviously many of us know her, one of the founding members of the National Organization for Women. But what I really love about Gloria Steinem is she's often very much in solidarity with women of color. And she often talks about everything she's learned from Native American women, from Black women in her life. And she talks about her mistakes and she talks about she's very, I think, humble in the way she speaks about things. And she says that we should attribute feminism to Black women and that Black women have taught her so much about what she needs to learn about feminism. She spent a really long time studying with Wilma Mankiller, who was the first woman to lead the Cherokee Nation, and she learned from her about indigenous values and how she can use that to project better feminism. And I think she's an example that for many of us who are white women, we can learn from of how do we be humble? How do we learn from other feminists who are different than us, who experience the world differently than us, and become stronger feminists as a result of it, instead of centering ourselves and centering our own issues. Jane Fonda is another example of someone, and I love this quote. She says, Jane Fonda said she came into feminism very late in her life and that she wouldn't have called herself a feminism. She said, it took me 30 years to get it, but it's okay to be a late bloomer as long as you don't miss the flower show. And I think Jane Fonda is an example of someone who we have to have on ramps for people. You might be meeting people right now who are saying they maybe regret their choice for voting for Trump. And if you are meeting those people, we need to meet them with, well, come join me instead of, I told you so. And that's going to be really hard. But that's what we need to do is kind of bring people in. We also need to model vulnerability and model that we weren't always perfect as activists, that we don't always have all the answers, or that maybe we, are learning how to grow. And that's really important too, to have that self-reflection, to be able to say, I'm changing and I'm going to be different. And I think that's what we can learn from these women. So I want us to think about, we just went over some other women in the chat and one man, Byron Rustin. I would love for you to just share in the chat, who are you still resonating the most with out of all these activists that we talked with? Who do you feel like you're most aligned to their personality? What are some ideas that you're getting that are really aligned to your personality? Seeing a logistics person. Great. Jane Fonda, it's not too late. Gloria Flo Kennedy, amazing. Some still people are still the artists. Great. Communicators, beautiful. Logistics, yep, yep. All right, yeah. So we talked about inside politics. We talked about solving the system from the inside. We talked about outside politics, trying to push on the system from the outside through community building. We talked about self-reflection and allyship, being a listener, bringing people together. We talked about logistics. We can being connected to that end of it, right? We talked about humor. Are you the person that's going to make people laugh, bring them joy, all of those things. And so what I want us to do now is to start to think about planning for how we want to create change in our own communities. And there's some things that I want you to think about and things that are important to remember. You don't need to do everything, but you need to do something. So we don't need to tackle every issue. We don't need to tackle, I focus a lot on education issues because that's my thing. I can't solve everything. My friend, one of my best friends from college, is a climate scientist. I know Margaret's got climate. I'm working on education. She's organizing around that. I'm working on this. I mean, that's what we need to remember is that we're not alone. We're organizing, we need to organize in groups. We need to organize in social events. We need to not be doom scrolling. We need to be together in community. I am feeling so good just knowing that you're all here with me tonight. And that's what we need to remember is that we need to have people around us and we need to find groups that match our personality. When Julie and I randomly emailed Julie Womack to do talks for Red, White, and Blue. And our personalities matched. And I felt like we were able to work together and we shared values. There are other organizations that I believe in their values and I support their work, but when I went to their meetings, I just wasn't that into them. And that's okay, right? We have to find our group that we like and show up to those groups. We also have to take care of ourselves. You have to put your oxygen mask on first. If you're not taking care of yourself emotionally, if you're not taking care of your family, your friends, you're not going to have the energy for activism. And so protecting yourself, protecting your energy so you can be more engaged and be more involved. The other thing that I need us to think about too is this idea of habit stacking. So connecting our activism to things you're already doing and activities you already love, which is why I had you brainstorm those activities in the beginning. You love hiking. Let's talk about politics for a few minutes, and then we're going to go on a hike in the woods and calm down and think about at the end what we can do for our community, right? If you love crocheting, I saw someone wrote in the chat already this idea that they knit hats for people who are homeless. If that's what you love to do, get a group of women together to crochet, and men, I shouldn't just say women, get a group of people together to crochet and sell those hats to people or donate them to people who are homeless or sell them and raise some money for charity, right? These are all things that you can be doing, right? Just connecting them to the things that you love. And why the habit stacking I think is so important is we have to fight for the rest of our lives. And that needs to also be with people we like and sustainable. I love teaching. I teach college students, I teach teachers. It's now 8 o'clock at night and I'm teaching you. And this doesn't feel like work to me because I love it. And so I think we have to find the things that are aligning to our purpose and aligning to the things that we love. I always tell this story. There was a time where my friend, she was running for city council. She asked me to be her treasurer on this campaign. The only class in college that I got a C in was financial accounting. So why I thought I could be her treasurer was insane to me. An hour's worth of work would take me 4 hours of time to do because I hated doing the treasury work. I worked on another campaign and I trained all the volunteers. That felt really easy to me. Why was training the volunteers easy to me? Because it aligned to my values. It aligned to my loves. It aligned to teaching, right? Training volunteers is teaching. Whereas doing the treasury work was aligned to accounting, was aligned to math skills, things that I'm not particularly good at and things that I don't love. There's someone out here though who's really good at accounting, and you should go work on someone's campaign as their treasurer. You should do things that align with your purpose and your passion. And you need to also remember that you don't need permission to do community organizing. You should be creating your friends. You got 10 friends that don't like Donald Trump, get together in a group, talk about what we're going to do tomorrow in our group, right? You've got a few friends that are really upset about immigration and what's happening with the ICE raids. You get those people together. We say we're going to have some wine, we're going to have some drinks, we're going to have some fun, and we're going to talk about what we're going to do in our community. You don't necessarily need a formal group at a certain time in order to connect with people you love and bring change to your community. And at the same time, you also don't need to start something. There's this community here. There's amazing organizations all over the country that are doing great work. Plug in and be a part of it. You don't need to put all this pressure on yourselves. Okay, and so what I want us to just think about here is what are some commitments that you want to make. So we talked a little bit about where you see your personality reflected in the work of activists. What gifts and talents do you have to share with the world? So, and I also want us to keep in mind, like a lot of you are, I know a lot of the groups, people in Red, White, and Blue are moms and parents, and a lot of my friends right now are new parents, and it's really hard to do that. So I was joking with one of my friends. I said, she's a new parent, her baby is 8 months old. And I said, why don't you have a pump and dump Elon Musk party where you talk about how hard it is to breastfeed and how horrible Elon Musk is, and you talk about fighting for more maternal care. What are the things, again, that are connected to your lives and connected to your personalities? So what I would love for you to think about right now is just what are some things that you want to commit to hearing these things? And Julie, I would love for you to share just some of the other things that have happened at Red, Wine, and Blue that are similar to this of like incredible women and men starting groups in Red, Wine, and Blue that would help people give them some ideas for their commitments that they're going to do for this week. So I'm going to pause and let Julie share her screen and talk about some of the things that you can do that are really concrete.
Okay, thank you so much, Jillian. So, well, number one, I'm going to drop in the chat if you were not familiar yet. We do have a piece of our organization called Trouble Nation. Trouble Nation is our part of our organization where we help people start organizing in their community. So, if you have ever wanted to start a group, whether it's you just want to get people together to like crochet hats, but you want to keep growing that group and bringing more people in, we are here to support you in local organizing. We help you get started. We give you a platform. We have staff that helps you and supports you with ideas. But everything that Jillian's been talking about tonight, all of these creative ideas, it doesn't have to always be about calling your legislators or showing up at the state house. Like there are so many ways to organize, and it can be fun, and it should be fun because people come back because they have made friendships. This organizing is building community and bringing more and more people into that community. And I made these slides before I saw Jillian's, and so she's brilliant, and she already actually shared, and you all in the chat have shared a lot of these ideas already. But I wanted to share some of the things that we actually brainstorm as our organizing team around you're not to, what's not a typical political gathering that instead of going to a meeting and sitting in a hard chair in a really boring room and listening to someone drone on, we want to think of fun, interesting things to do. And you guys have touched on a lot of these tonight. But, focusing on self-care right now, people maybe just want to check out from politics and just have some fun. So craftivism, we did a whole bunch of friendship bracelets, like the Taylor Swift friendship bracelets. People love to do that. Painting rocks, getting together and just doing something really fun. Getting together just at a Panera or at someone's house, cookies, coffees, just hang out, chat, bring friends in to have that conversation. Go to yoga, do meditation. We had a lot of Zen yoga type stuff people wanted to do. One of our organizers did vision boards. She cut out all kinds of things from magazines and ordered stickers and poster board and had people come over and create vision boards of like what they wanted to see happen, what they wanted to be doing. Um, I personally, a couple years ago, we went to a axe throwing place, Rage Room. You can go smash things. So right now, maybe that is self-care, is that you were doing something for yourself and just getting that energy out and then bringing other people in. And then the other thing is, Jillian's already talked about this. Like I said, we mind meld, we get along really well, is the community building aspect of it. Um, so this is the whole, let's make friends. Let's make people get to know each other. So book clubs, we have a band book club we do virtually, but start a book club in your community. It could be political books, it could be self-help books, it could be band books, it could be whatever it is that floats your boat. Amanda in Pennsylvania does a Bitch and Stitch event every week. Gets women together who like to either knit or crochet or whatever it is that they like to do, and they do their craft and they talk the whole time and they were able to vent and get out, and this group keeps growing and growing because more people want in. A soup night or a potluck, everyone comes over, brings something, or you get some people to bring something. It's a great way to build community. We actually do that locally. Trivia, game night. Go do that someplace. Get a gathering. Maybe if you have a group, make a sign for your table, and then people are going to come over and ask you, like, what's that group all about? What are you doing? And you can bring more people in. Do a community service project. I think Jillian talked about that, with the Black Panther women, like doing something to help your community, especially right now with immigration issues, with attacks on our schools. There are so many things you can do. We've held drives for a cause before. We've collected gift cards for a women's shelter near us, actually collected period products for them. We have, go find a food pantry, do a clothing drive, collect banned books and take them to your school board or something like that. And the other thing that's really an easy way to get community going is find a great public event. Maybe there's an amazing speaker coming to your city, or your independent bookstore has a speaker. Maybe you want to go see Inside Out too, like Jillian said. Go find a movie. But go to these events, maybe go get a drink ahead of time or go get some appetizers and then walk to the event together. Meet up before you go to a movie. But these are really easy things you can do to build community that are fun. They're not like totally talking about politics the whole time, but you are making that group where they share your values. And when it comes time for elections, when it comes time to inform your friends and family, when it comes time to turn out voters, you already got your people and they can go talk to their people. That's my pitch. I'm going to kick back to Julia. Julian. See, there's too many Julies and Jillians, and
Millions and billions. Yes. And I think that's what we want to do is we want to build community. We want to make people feel they're connected. We want to also think about like where people are at. So I went to a campus in college that was a little bit more conservative. And people didn't want to talk about really intense politics. And I wanted to talk about really intense politics. And at the time, I was trying to raise awareness about the genocide in Darfur. And people weren't really wanting to come to an event to talk about that. So we did a dance for Darfur where everyone had to pay $25, which was a lot of money in college, and all of the money went to the International Rescue Committee. And when people came into this formal dance, I handed out a pamphlet about what was going on in Darfur. And we didn't talk about it at the dance, but then people were like, oh my goodness, I need to talk about this. And then they came to our other educational events. And so what that taught me very early on in my life when I was young is sometimes you have to meet people where they're at. So on my campus at that point, people were not ready to fully engage. It was a more conservative campus. It wasn't ready to be fully engaged. I needed to meet them where they're at and then build up to those bigger things. And so maybe in your community, people aren't ready to jump right in and talk about politics. And that's okay, right? You start with something, you say, let's go watch the Rustin movie together. And then that's a launching pad for something else that's bigger. And so we have to think about those kinds of things. But this doesn't have to be defeating. This doesn't have to be sad. We need to hold on to each other and we need to feel connected. I also just want to share with you, I'm so grateful that you were all able to come tonight. And I just want to help more people. I just want to teach more people. I want to teach more people about the fabulous women and men who've made this country great. So I'm putting this in the chat, this link for you. I would love for you to sign up to learn more about Roots to Revolution. If you want to invite me to talk to your group, to talk to your organization. I have had made amazing connections through Roots to Revolution, traveling all over the country, talking to people. So I would love to come to your community. And so I'll put that link again. But some of the things we are teaching about really in the next few weeks and months is, we talk about inclusive feminism. We do a course on LGBTQIA plus history. I've also done a lot of classes on Civics 101. Maybe the last time you took a civics class was when you were 16 years old and you need to remember what's in the Constitution, and that's okay. There's no shame, but we need to know it. We're also piloting some new courses right now to talk about immigration and the history of immigration because we need to support our immigrant communities. Donald Trump, in his inauguration speech, called this the Golden Age. The Gilded Age was a time of big billionaires as well in the 1890s. And so learning from that time period and how people defeated the oligarchs of the 1890s is how we're going to defeat the oligarchs of the 2025 era. So learning from history in all of our workshops, we lean on history like we did tonight. Talking about powerful people to help us move forward and make change in our community. So I really would love for you to join. Fill out that web page, that Google survey if you're interested in learning more. And if some of you do want to hang on for some questions, I do have some more time and I can hang on for some questions. Joining again, some people are asking in the chat, where am I located? I'm in New York. I'm a Brooklyn, New Yorker, but I do a lot of events virtually like this. I also, if it works out, I'm happy to travel to do events. Just please get in touch and would love to see more of you all and connect with more of you. And, if you have a group that wants to do the same presentation, we'll do that. So I'll pop this back up if anybody else wants to check it out. And I cannot believe I got through all of this before 8:30, but if anyone wants to hang on to talk about some of their ideas, I'm free.
Jillian, do you have ideas of family-friendly events that you have found successful?
Yeah, so something we're doing, I'm really excited about this one. My Brennan is a parent of a toddler, and so she is a community organizer and does a ton of great work herself. She's a teacher, and she wanted to facilitate a parent group about how she is, doing things. So I actually volunteered to babysit the kids. So people are bringing their kids to the event. The parents are meeting in one room. I'm not a parent, and I'm watching a movie with the kids in the other rooms. The parents can talk about the things while the kids are doing activities and connecting. I think other things that you can do that directly involve the kids is like reading books to kids about politics or about community. So there's incredible books about community organizing that you can have kids read and do that together, and then talk to the parents about like information that you're sharing around like how you're raising your kid to be more inclusive and understanding. I think I've also done, like, for example, I did an event called Born on the Water with the book Born on the Water, which is from the 1619 Project. And we talked about that book. And then the parents swap strategies for how they could raise their kids to talk about slavery and what are some of the challenges with talking about slavery as a parent. And so that was an event. I know, like, my sister is a parent. She has an 18-month-old and a 6-year-old, and she does a lot of stuff volunteering at the school. But now her and the parents are organizing around like protecting the schools against ICE. My sister started a scholarship fund in her school district in honor of our parents. And she raises money for the school district, and she does that with other parents. So I think it's also about like connecting to those things. And I know just casually also like the power of a conversation. Like it was at my sister's, my niece's birthday party, there were parents there and they were talking about politics. It was at Kidville in Montclair, New Jersey, but it was also a talk about politics and just that connection piece. And just my sister finds a lot of comfort, I know, in knowing that other parents in her community care about these issues. And so I think just also thinking about those, but those are some of my ideas for parents. And then someone asked in the chat, what are some good books? Social Justice Books is a website that has books for every single age level that I highly recommend for parents and teachers. And then someone asked for getting in touch in the chat. You can fill out this survey, and my email is just Jillian@Roots2Revolution, and you can certainly feel free to email me. And then I think Danielle had her hand up. Danielle, if you're still there, take your question. I don't know if you dropped off.
I'm your biggest fan. Thanks
Danielle
for doing
and I
this.
are friends from college. It was that college story, yeah.
Yeah, and I love matching personality with, organizing and joy. And you've given me so many ideas. I feel so pumped up, as I think so many people do here. And I also am grappling with the larger feeling of being ineffectual to these powerful corporations and political figures, and the smallness of my impact. And I think I know what you're going to say, but like, if you have ideas on how to, I don't know, feel like I'm impacting that at a larger level, or creating the policy shift, like I don't know. Am I making sense?
Yes, you're making a lot of sense. Yes, so I think policy shifts from public opinion. And so I think the more that we talk about these issues with our communities, the more we elevate them, the more we have great answers to these questions. That's how the policy starts to shift. I also think I just believe in the power and maybe this is the teacher in me, because when you're a teacher, you teach a group of kids for 9 months and then you send them off into the world and you have to hope for the best. You have to hope that whatever you tell them sticks. And you don't know. You never see them again. You don't really know, right? Once they graduate, like you have no idea if it landed. So I do, just in my heart of hearts, and maybe this is just blind faith, but I believe in the power of the ripple effect. I believe that I taught 700 people tonight, and 700 people are going to talk to 10 more people. So that's another, I'm terrible at math, right? That's another 10, that's another 7, that's 7,000 people. So now I've reached 7,000 people tonight. I have 3 students that are now history teachers. So I taught 1,000 students when I was teaching in my lifetime. And those students then those teachers who were my students are now going to teach 1,000 other people. And so I just believe in that power, that our energy, our beauty, our gifts, they radiate out. And I know that's not really concrete. But I do believe that. So I believe the more conversations but you tell people, you say, I need you to go talk to 5 more people about what I just told you. I need you to make sure you register 5 more friends to vote. Like, give them that step, right? But I think that does lead. In terms of concrete policy, I also think we have to remember our senators and our representatives work for us.
Mhm.
So going to them with the ideas, barging down their doors and going to meetings. And I think local people will allow you, you'll be able to show up with those local people. So on this weekend coming up, my state representative, my state senator, and my city council person are having a community organizing event that I am going in person. So now I'm going to know them in person. So now this is
That's
not
great.
good for them because I'm going to be constantly saying, "Do you remember me? I met you in person."
I know you are.
Local
That's awesome.
people- Those local
That's great.
people will answer you, right? My city council person now follows me on Instagram because I'm barging down her door, right? So, and she's wonderful, and she's actually really wonderful. So I think that it's about just continuing to make those connections. I hope that helped. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been amazing spending time with you, and don't lose the faith. We're gonna fight this, and we're gonna get through it, and we're gonna do it with a good spirit. And I really appreciate all of you so much. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you so much, everybody. I do want to say I did see some people in the chat talking about trying to join Trouble Nation groups or find people in their area. If you were having trouble, or maybe your group isn't as active as you want it to be, I know Julie gave her email address. I'm going to drop mine too. It's just julie@redwine.blue. Or you could do Julie Collins. It's Julie Collins, because there's two Julies, at redwine.blue. Or you can just write Trouble Nation at redwine.blue. And sometimes groups start and the people get busy. So there may be a way to start a new group, and we can definitely help you find people in your area. So reach out to Trouble Nation because they're the ones who can really help you with that. But we definitely want to do everything we can to get people active, and doing all these wonderful things to build community. So thank you again to Jillian for this amazing presentation. I learned so much. I always love hearing about all these women in history that they never taught me in school. Should have needed you as my teacher. Okay, everybody have a really great evening.
Thanks, everyone.